It is one of my goals to be a son of Issachar. First Chronicles 12:32, the sons of Issachar, 200 leaders from all their tribes. They were men in David's army that gathered together with him in Hebron to stand with him for the kingdom. And they understood the times and knew what Israel should do. That's one of my goals, and I believe throughout the church, especially leaders, we need to be sons of Issachar, those who understand the times and know what God's people should do. Not just have a fascination with end time events, not just have a fascination with prophecy, but understand what's happening in a culture and therefore how we as God's people should respond. What is God doing? What are the people doing? What is Satan doing? And how should we respond? Many times we have looked at the outward and failed to understand what was happening behind the scenes. I always use the counterculture revolution of the 60s as a primary example. So we know there was a radical shift in America and other countries in the 60s. We know, as psychologist David Myers pointed out around the year 2000, that if you fell asleep in 1960 and woke up in 2000, that you'd wake up to the divorce rate doubled and teen suicide tripled and reported violent crime up 4 times and prison population up 5 times and children born out of wedlock up 6 times and people living together out of wedlock up 7 times. The great majority of that shift happened in a short period of time in the 60s. And we know that there is the characterization of the 60s as the time of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It was a time of rebellion. It was a time of the flesh. It was a time of all types of ungodly movements and activities. That's the time during which I became a heavy drug user from 69 to 71 before coming to faith late in 71. So there's no denying what happened. There's no denying the rebellion. There's no denying the flesh. There's no denying the sin. There's no denying the negative influence of Eastern religion and coupled with drugs and rock music and immorality. And there was a major cultural shift. And we are reaping the fruit of it to this day. At the same time, something else was going on. At the same time, there was a cry from young people looking for more. At the same time, they were asking spiritual questions. They were wondering about the purpose of meaning of life. They were shaken by the assassinations, JFK and Martin Luther King and RFK in 63 and 68. They were shaken by the prospect of being shipped off to war in Vietnam. For what purpose? Or just to die there. They had a lot of questions as we were now prospering and rebuilding after the war years and stability coming to America and more young people being born and more young people going to college. They were asking more and more questions. Why are we here? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? They were asking good questions, but to my understanding, the church of the day was not seeing, by and large, the spiritual seeking of the young people, recognizing what they were looking for and asking about. Instead, the church was more aware of, look at all the evil, look at all the rebellion, look at all the sin. This must be the last days. Jesus must be coming any minute. All the prophecies are coming to pass. We're out of here soon. Rather than saying, what a ripe moment in history. What a perfect time in history. What a time for the gospel to go forward. Young people asking about the meaning of life. Young people asking spiritual questions. Now, it's true that many young people wrote off traditional religion. The church, they have the same old answers, and the synagogue, they have the same old answers, and we don't care about that. And they were looking at other places. But wisdom could have come from the church at that time to go where people were, young people, all right, and say, hey, you want something radical, you want new life, you want the meaning of life, check out the teachings of Jesus. And in fact, Jesus became very popular in the hippie movement as the most radical counterculture revolutionary of all, joined with a message of peace and love. Now, when you bring in the whole message with repentance, holiness, the cross, and you preach to people who are now bound in sin, sexual sin, drug addiction, and other things, alcoholism, and are now messing up their own lives, it was a very ripe time. That's why when the Jesus People movement began around 67 and came to a head in the early 70s, that's why so many hundreds of thousands of hippies and radicals and rebels around the world came to faith. But for the most part, only a small part of the church was aware of what was happening. And the majority seemed to judge primarily by outward things and missed a massive opportunity of harvest. It's the same thing today. We can just look at everything that's wrong in America, and there's a lot that's wrong. And we can look at the radical left and the radical right, and we can see the division in the country, and we can see the wrong direction of the country, the war on gender, something that foundational, the indoctrinating of our young people, the attack on the institution of marriage, the seduction of the nation through porn. We can see all these things and recognize what's happening on the bad side, but is there something else going on? Are young people crying out for justice, but they're just misguided in what they're doing? Are people recognizing that America is not the ultimate hope and the president is not the ultimate hope and there must be more? Is there something else going on behind the scenes spiritually that we need to take hold of? That's my appeal. Let us not just judge by what our eyes see. Let us be on our faces with the scriptures open, saying, God, give us wisdom, give us insight, give us spiritual understanding. Help us to recognize what the enemy is doing. That's why, to me, it's important to connect the dots and recognize the same demonic forces that operated through Jezebel 3,000 years ago are operating again today through many others. That's why it's important for us to be alert spiritually so that we are vigilant and recognizing the war that we're in. At the same time, I believe it's harvest time. The increase in depression and suicide among young people, the increasing isolationism they feel through social media and things like that, and people just getting separated, the ugly hostility of the world around them. Many still looking for something authentic, community. If the church could be the real deal, and in so many places it is doing just that, I believe young people and old will come flocking to Jesus in our day.